Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to our Tuesday night live stream for Week 18 of the 2024 fantasy football season. Over the course of the next 30 minutes or so, maybe an hour, depending on how many people kind of filter through today's live stream, we're talking about exactly this: my top 36 running back rankings going into Week 18. Again, there aren't very many people that first and foremost are playing in Week 18, but if in fact you are, hopefully these rankings can set yourself, kind of put yourself into a position to succeed in, of course, capturing a 2024 fantasy football championship when it's all said and done. Outside of that, again, for those of you who are here in the live chat, I do see many of you in regards to having won championships. Congratulations for those of you who are able to do so. For those of you who are still fighting for a championship come Week 18, hopefully we can get everything settled away in regards to the structure of how we want to set up the overall circumstance here. What I actually want to do, kind of low-key, I think I'm going to change the way that I format this. Instead of it filtering, I think I'm just going to do it this way, so that if in fact somebody wants to see it, we could do it this way. All right, so these are my top 36 running back rankings. A couple pieces of note that we should all be aware of. There is an expectation that the teams such as the Chiefs, the Buffalo Bills, the Texans, the Los Angeles Rams, and most likely the Philadelphia Eagles will not be starting their main priority guys for more than a quarter, if not at all. So therefore, a lot of the running backs that have carried us to this point, Saquon Barkley, James Cook, whether it be a Kareem Hunt going into the given week, Kyron Williams, those kind of players are not going to probably be available for our teams. Now, hopefully you have the rest of these players that are on hand, because they will be fired up and expected to play, assuming there isn't an injury that pops up between now and this upcoming Saturday and Sunday's games. So if you guys are playing in Week 18, you are in the live chat right now. If you have a question, please do me a favor. Ask away. I see Jimmy in the chat asking, Jalen Hurts and Brock Purdy not looking good. Yeah, I would assume that neither of those two play. Says, quarterback should I target? If you're looking for a quarterback this week, if someone of the caliber, for example, of Russell Wilson, Bryce Young, Drake May are available, pick them up. If those quarterbacks are not available in your league, do me a favor, type in your question, type in the quarterbacks that you have available on the wire within your league, and I'll go ahead and take a look at them and give you a suggestion going into this week. Let's see here. Brian Colorado sent in a question, says, I'm out right now, so I probably won't see this, but didn't want to forget to thank you for helping me out over the fantasy football. This is my, wow, how about that? Helping me win my first fantasy football championship, and tell you Happy New Year's. Stay safe, Andrew. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, Brian. Congratulations on the victory. Again, for those of you guys who were able to bring in the W this most recent week, congratulations. That is fantastic. For those of you who came short, I apologize. That is a rough situation. It is what it is. Going up against the buzzsaw, some of these teams like a T. Higgins, Joe Burrow stack was definitely not in a lot of our expectations of getting like 80 points dropped on us from two singular players. Obviously, I see someone mention the Colts defense. Yeah, nobody expected the Colts to go to Cancun 1 week early, or 2 weeks early at that. They gave up 45 points to a team that was averaging 14 points per game the entire season. The worst offense in the National Football League ended up completely slicing them in half. Let's see here. Caden says, where's J.K. Dobbins? J.K. Dobbins is number 9 on screen, somewhere up there. He's the beginning of the beach here. I mean, look, when we talk about these players across the board, some of these players are still in question. So there is a possibility, theoretically speaking, in which Chase Brown, Aaron Jones, my number 7 and number 8 going into this week, even though we have heard positive information regarding them going into Week 18, there's always a chance that they could end up missing, considering the injuries that they sustained this most recent week. Chase Brown obviously with an ankle, and Aaron Jones with a quad contusion. So if both those two players by any chance are ending up missing this given week, do not be surprised. The expectation is that, of course, Tony Pollard could end up playing this week. Him and J.K. Dobbins, I think, both need individually within their incentives for their contracts, like 80 plus rushing yards apiece. If they both are able to amass that volume, they're both in line for a pretty good incentive boost in terms of monetary upside. Outside of that, a lot of these other players, like Devon Achane, sits at number 14, despite the fact that, of course, he's typically a top 10 running back in the absence of Tua Tagovailoa, which is expected to be the case once again this week. He is a lesser option because the receiving upside is just not privy to him, unfortunately, as they, kind of lean away from his direction in there. Anyway, we can go ahead and talk about some of these players that are given, at a greater kind of tense as we continue on. Let's see what we have in the live chat here. Do you think Drake May is going to play? Yeah, I think so. I mean, unless there's an injury that is specifically going to hold him out, the expectation is that, yes, he is going to play. Again, between now and Saturday, Sunday, there's still a lot of time. If there's something that, again, is a significant enough of an injury to where it will hold him out, I'd be surprised. But, time will tell. Hey, been following since for the past 3 seasons. Have been a major help. I just wanted to say thank you. Happy New Year's. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Shavoy, that's very kind words. Thank you. Rain today says, I survived Baker Mayfield. Yeah, if you survived Baker Mayfield, dude, this most recent week in my main league championship, I survived Mike Evans and Jaleel McLaughlin. No, not Jaleel McLaughlin. Sorry. Jalen McMillan. I don't know why I said Jaleel McLaughlin because I looked at him on screen at 25. Mike Evans, Jalen McMillan combo. That is what I had to survive. That was the buzzsaw of, and Lad McConkey all on one team. He had like 80 points, almost 90 points just off of 3 receivers. And I survived it because I had T. Higgins, Amon-Ra, and Devontae Smith. I had the reverse Uno card ready in stock at that point. Let's see here. D-Rod79 says, what do you think about Flacco over Russell? Look, the issue with Flacco inherently is that, again, he doesn't care. He's going to throw the ball. If he throws 3 picks like he does his most recent week, again, it would not surprise us. The last couple times that Flacco has started, he has really just been kind of tossing it. He doesn't really care if he turns over the ball, really. So, in comparison, considering Baker, in my mind, has the better matchup, at least at this point. Well, not the better matchup per se in terms of fantasy point production, but at least last time out against that defense, threw for over 400 yards and 3 touchdowns. I would assume that Russell Wilson would be the preferred of the two as of right now in my mind. Ed Khalil says, I need 2 wide receivers and a flex and a full PPR. We have Harrison, Flowers, McMillan, McLaurin, Thielen, and Abdullah. I mean, look, of the available options that you have here, I think it's pretty simple. Like, your 2 best options, assuming McLaurin shows up, would be, assuming he shows up. Again, very difficult to assume that. Thielen and McMillan are probably the guys you just blindly play. McLaurin could be a guy that could show up and play incredibly well against the Dallas Cowboys. Again, that secondary has not played well, but last time out against them, he didn't have the greatest game. It wasn't until the very final, leg of that entire game where he had a 70-yard touchdown, in which it saved his overall performance. If I was you, I would not mind a Week 18 play of Thielen and McMillan there. That's something that I'm actually quite interested in. Jocelyn says, hey, bro, I'm in a PPR, 2-2-2. So 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 1 flex, okay? Says I have Hall, Garendo, Warren, Madison, Neighbors, Zay Flowers, Drake London, Jennings, Marvin Harrison, and Jonnu Smith. All right, cool. So, I mean, look, if we're going 2-2-1 combo, at running back, the highest ranked players that I currently have, I don't even have Madison ranked because, again, I don't expect him to do much if, Amir Abdullah is going to continue to carry the rock at the volume at which he has. So your starting running backs would probably end up being Hall and Garendo at that point. As for your wide receivers, Neighbors and Drake London, probably the 1-2 combo, and then putting like Marvin Harrison within your flex, and then at tight end you have Jonnu Smith sitting there. If in fact you have I would probably go in that direction. We could talk about the potential of if you have another tight end in, and we could potentially flex Jonnu, but that depends on scoring format at that point. Caden says, do you think Anthony Richardson will play? My expectation is no. As it currently stands, again, they have nothing to play for. If the injury that forced him to miss this most recent week is significant enough to force him to miss the Week 17 game, in which, again, they had an opportunity to win that game and get to the potential playoff conversation, if, in fact, some of the games had gone to certain directions, they would have still been in the race, in the hunt. The fact that he wasn't able to play this most recent week, I would assume that now that they're eliminated outright, there's probably not a wise decision to throw him out there and risk any sort of re-injury and or extension to that injury that could potentially lead to a off-season surgery or rehab that is unwanted at this point from the organization, I would assume, and of course from him. Let's see here. C-Max says, hey, Andrew, picked up my championship. That's right, Atta baby. What's the guy who won without Jalen Hurts, finished them off with Brock Purdy last night? Did not win them all, but I got a lot of top 3s. Congratulations, K-Mike. Yeah, unfortunately, weren't able to bring in all the championships, but hey, at least you were able to bring in a couple. That's what counts. Nick AM says, Chigoziem Okonkwo, Kelsey, Gesicki, or Ertz. Don't expect Kelsey to play at all. So if I was going to rank one of those 3 tight ends between Chigoziem Okonkwo, Ertz, and Gesicki, I'd probably go Ertz 1, Gesicki 2, Chigoziem Okonkwo 3. The reason why Okonkwo falls to the wayside as the number 3 option primarily is because the head coach and offensive play caller of the Tennessee Titans earlier this week already designated that both Will Levis and Mason Rudolph are going to play. So if they're going to both split overall snaps, touches, etc. at the quarterback position, I wouldn't anticipate Chigoziem Okonkwo to have as high as a floor of production. So Ertz number 1, Gesicki number 2. Don't expect Kelsey to play, and I'd avoid Okonkwo this week. Failures no option says, do you think Jaden will play the whole game? Okay, so here's the current situation. The Washington Commanders are guaranteed to have a playoff spot. That is a given. The only question that currently stands is whether or not they're going to be the number 6 or 7 seed within the NFL playoff standings. If they were the number 6 seed, they would be playing against, expected, the Los Angeles Rams. While if they were the number 7 seed, they would have to take on a team, unfortunately, like the Philadelphia Eagles. If I'm not, well, actually, they're number 2 seed. Rams would be technically... Wait, hold on, wait. 7th? Okay, let me go look at these standings. I just have to check this up. NFL playoff picture. I had it right here. Okay, here it is. So, theoretically speaking, as it currently stands, technically, yeah. Okay, so this is how it would go. They don't want the 7th seed because they would have to play against the Eagles. So if they were to lose this week, they'd have to play against the Eagles, which again hasn't relatively fared well for them, even though the most recent time against them they won. It was because Jalen Hurts got concussed and left in the first quarter. So I don't think that they fare relatively well against their division rival. So they want to win this week in order to have to play against the Los Angeles Rams, which by all means is a significantly easier matchup in comparison to taking on the Eagles. So they want to win because currently they have the higher standing over the Packers. And we would assume that the Packers are going to beat the Bears. So I'd assume that the Washington Commanders are going to keep their starters in the entire game in order to win, and then in order to play against the LA Rams indoors rather than travel to Philly for the first round matchup. Let's see here. D-Rod at 79 says defense, Chargers, Buccaneers, or Packers. Okay, so looking at week 18's matchups for the given week. As it currently stands, what we are expecting is that the Chargers are going to fire up their guys the entire way because they want to win. So taking on the Raiders is as good of a matchup as you could possibly ask for. That being said, taking on the Bucs taking on the, and then we have the Packers. Jeez, brother. I think those are all really good options. If I was going to suggest one of them, I'd probably go in the direction of playing the Buccaneers, taking on the New Orleans Saints. I don't think that the New Orleans Saints will score anything. I mean, the Saints offense as a whole, they cannot run the ball, and even through the air, they've struggled mightily as of late with Rattler. So I take the Buccaneers defense between the three. All right, let's hear. Adventures here. Ertz or Smith from Miami tight end. Either Jonnu Smith or Zach Ertz. As of right now, I mean, look, the most recent performance from Zach Ertz makes me feel confident in the idea that we could probably roll him once again. The question is, you know what? Probably go in that direction. We'd probably just lean towards playing Zach Ertz. The only reason Jonnu Smith could be of value is if he had a super high target opportunity count or scores a touchdown. Honestly, if we have to rely upon one of those two things with the backup quarterback, Tyler Huntley, it's going to be a difficult time. So I think you just rather play the tight end that's associated with the better quarterback, Jaden Daniels, at this point. All right, let's see. React says, would you start J.K. Dobbins, Zach Charbonnet, or Tony Pollard this week? I mean, based on the rankings that I currently have, as it's currently constructed, I'd rather play J.K. Dobbins out of the three. So as my number 9, that's the direction I would go in. That's why they're ranked as such. Charbonnet, again, taking on a second string defense for the LA Rams is going to probably be a pretty solid matchup. Geno Smith, I think, needs 186 rushing yards to meet a $2 million incentive. Tony Pollard and J.K. Dobbins both need themselves 80 plus rushing yards to get themselves their financial incentive. So I'd assume that both of these, both Tony Pollard and Dobbins will be given a fair share of rushing attempts. We already know that Tyjae Spears is not playing this week. That was already designated at the beginning of the week by Brian Callahan, the head coach of the Titans. But Dobbins would be the preferred of the group, especially considering they're playing against the Raiders. It should be an easy game in which he scores. If he gets his 80 yards, he gets his touchdown. At that point, anything else on top of it is gravy. Randy Riggs says, how do we feel about the Colts defense last week? Yeah, it's one of the most tragic performances I've ever seen. Again, I talked about it earlier. The Giants, as a team, averaged 14 points per game the entire year. They give up 45. The Colts give up 45 to the Giants. The performance that Drew Lock had, 4 passing touchdowns, 1 rushing touchdown, is the 12th best quarterback performance of the season for fantasy purposes. In terms of EPA at the quarterback position, it's a top 6 performance in the last 20 years from Drew Lock. They didn't sack him a single time. Again, it was one of the most surgically, cut up, performances that we have seen against a lack of an effort of a defense that the Colts presented, unfortunately. Sven Dragon says, man, I lost by 3 after the Gibbs 30-yard touchdown. That's rough, man. That is rough. Easy E sends it a question, says, you're the man. AK, thanks for everything. Thank you, Easy. Appreciate that, bro. Nick AM says, sit A.J. Brown this week. Yeah, again, I don't expect A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Saquon Barkley, Jalen Hurts to play this week. I would assume that guys like Lane Johnson, even their starting right tackle, I'd assume Landon Dickerson, their left guard, I don't expect those guys to play. So I'd expect that the entire starting offense of that Eagles front most likely gets pulled. If in fact they play for the first quarter tops and then they're out. Because there's no risk. I mean, again, they're the number 2 seed, regardless of whether they win or lose, and they don't want to risk any sort of injury potential there. The Loop says, have you seen anything suggesting the Packers plan to play Josh Jacobs? The current expectation is the same kind of incentive that the Packers and Commanders have to try to win this week. So, for example, if the Packers were to win, they play against the Rams. In the event in which, of course, the Commanders lost. In the event in which, of course, the Commanders lost, the Packers win, they play against the Rams rather than having to travel to Philly. So the current incentive for the Packers is win in order to avoid the Philadelphia Eagles in the first round of the playoffs. Otherwise, if you win, and of course the Commanders lose to the Cowboys, you have an opportunity of taking on the Rams. Now, again, at this current moment in time, if we look at the upcoming schedule for Week 18, it'll depend on when these teams actually start to play. So considering the Packers take on the Bears at 10 a.m., and so do the Washington Commanders taking on the Cowboys, they won't have information regarding whether the Commanders have won. Because if the Commanders win, it doesn't matter what the Packers do. So in this circumstance, I'd assume that they're going to fire up their starters. As to how much Josh Jacobs is going to play, I mean, by the time we get to halftime, most likely the first drive of the third quarter, I'd assume that the Packers are up by so many points at that point, or the Bears have yet to score a single point as an offense at that point, to where Jacobs probably has very limited usage in the second half. That's why I have him as a kind of A-tier running back in comparison to an S-tier running back, because I don't expect him to play the entire game. Same thing with someone like Derrick Henry. I don't expect him to play the entire game as they take on Cleveland. It shouldn't be a hard trot for them to go ahead and outscore them by 30 relatively early within the game. So as of right now, yes, I would anticipate that Jacobs is going to play. Let's hear. Evil Turkey says, won back-to-back championships in a Dynasty League. Thanks to your videos. Congratulations, Evil. I'm glad to hear that, man. Prankster's Nightmare says, Texans, Falcons, or Packers defense. I don't expect the Texans to be at a full go, even though, of course, their head coach has said that, hey, listen, we want to go out there. We want to kind of prove that what we did last time out against the Baltimore Ravens isn't our type of football, isn't our brand of football. Understand that I have Joe Mixon here at number 32, if you guys can see within the G tier. The only reason I have him at number 32 is because I only think he's going to play in the first half. I think that they want to go out with their starters in the first half of that game, kind of establish, hey, okay, this is how we can play football, and then they're going to go ahead and rest them in the second half, because whether they win or lose, they are still the they're still the AFC South champions, and they're going to have a home game. So they don't have to press Joe Mixon to play the entirety of that second half. I mean, shoot, they could just play him in the first half. They're up 14 points, and then they pull him against the Titans. It's very much so possible. So as of right now, I'd assume limited play from Texans starters, including defense, especially in that second half of the game. So if I was in your situation, Pranksters, I'd probably play the Packers out of that group of defenses. I'll take the Packers defense. Thank you. Failures no option says, if Njoku sits, start Strange or Jawan Johnson. I would assume that Njoku is going to sit. So in that scenario, if I was going to sit if I was going to play one of those two tight ends, let me see here. I'm actually curious what the overall snap count for Brenton Strange was this most recent week. Let me go check it out right now. Let's see. If we look at snap counts, Brenton Strange, 72%. Okay, it's definitely better than his most recent week, which, again, he only played like 50% of the snaps, and obviously his target opportunity kind of showed for it. But, I mean, he's still coming off of a game of one target, so Jawan Johnson would be the preferred of the two, for sure. As for the next question, Jocelyn says, Colts dropped the ball. Yeah, I mean, brother, they didn't drop it. They dropped everything. A lot of people are going to be losing their jobs because of this most recent performance. D-Rod79 says, Jennings, Mims, or Zaccheaus in the flex. It depends on the – well, look, let's say, for example, Josh Dobbs is going to be playing quarterback for the 49ers. I mean, as soon as he came into the game, he looked towards Jennings on a consistent rate, back to back to back to back. So that's always a possibility. Zaccheaus has played incredibly well. Mims has played incredibly well as of late. But again, if I was going to lean towards one of them, I'd probably lean towards Jennings first, Zaccheaus second, and of course Mims third. Dr. Turbo says, I won my championship. Thank you, Andrew, for the guidance this year. Congratulations, Dr. Turbo. Speedy says, Justin Herbert or Russell Wilson this week. Russell has a great matchup against Cincinnati. I agree, absolutely. As of right now, there's probably a higher likelihood that Russell Wilson plays for the entirety of that game rather than Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert could very easily play in that first half, maybe even first three quarters. They're up by such a high volume of points to where they can pull him. There's always a possibility of that. I'd probably lean towards Russell Wilson for right now. Jake G says, I took some random On TikTok live and lost my championship. Actually started Reed over Smith. Woof. Damn, that is rough, brother. I'm sorry to hear that, Jake. Easy E says full PPR question in the chat. Also, Neighbors over Addison. Going into this week, assuming that the weather is not going to be an issue, I mean, Neighbors is going to get himself the higher volume of opportunity, so you probably lean in that direction. But I try to start I try to start Addison if I could. I don't know what your other alternative options are. Let's see what you have here in the chat. Easy. It says full PPR. We have quarterback Allen. Pick up Young. Okay, great. Or Drake May. Cool. I mean, if I was going to pick up one of the two quarterbacks, I'd probably pick up Bryce Young there. He's been playing, relatively well as relatively well as in like next season. If they go ahead and get him a solid number one wide receiver option, not named Adam Thielen, they can be in business there for sure. As for running backs, you have Jacobs, Dobbins. Cool. You have Chase, Thielen. Okay, I understand now why. Okay, I get it. McBride, flex is Addison. Look, at this point, if we're looking at the upcoming schedule for this week, the New York Giants taking on... Let's see here. They take on the Eagles. I mean, again, the Eagles aren't really going to have their starters out there for majority of that game. So if the weather doesn't imply for it to be a tough situation, I'd honestly, if I was you, I'd play Neighbors there. I don't even mind that as of right now. Assuming he plays, of course. All right, let me scroll down here. Easy E, we took care of that. I appreciate that again, brother. Nick AM says, are you comfortable with this as my two wide receivers and one flex? We have BTJ, McMillan, and Mims, or Waddle. Yeah, I'm not interested in playing Waddle, even if he starts for you. Even if he starts this week, if he's healthy, I'm not going to play him. I'd rather play BTJ, McMillan, and Mims there. That's cool. The Loop says, thanks for breaking it down. I'm sketchy on Jacobs and thought maybe I should go with Emmanuel Lewis. You mean Emmanuel Wilson, right? Yeah, Emmanuel Wilson will be the backup of Jacobs. There's always a possibility that that could take place, but we would get information regarding that as we get closer to this upcoming weekend. Again, if Jacobs was not going to play, we would have at least a little bit of information. Now, there's always the possibility that the coaching staff and, of course, the the organization keeps it close to the vest and just without telling the media, which they, of course, they have no incentive to telling the media that they would bench him at any point or, keep him rested. They could do so. They could play him in the first drive and he could sit. That is the difficulty of, unfortunately, week 18. And that's why we should try to, if you guys can, tell your commissioners, tell your league managers to avoid week 18 in the future. But as of right now, again, considering they don't want to play the Eagles in the first round and would much rather go to LA, play indoors, and beat up on the Rams, who cannot score as an offense, that would be the preferred. And that's why they're going to go ahead and they're going to fire up Jacobs to have a pretty solid game against the Chicago Bears' terrible run-stop defense. Again, speaking of terrible run-stop defenses, just so that we're all aware, I just wanted to go ahead and present this. We already showed this a little bit earlier today in regards to the live stream, but in regards to matchups going into this week, in terms of rushing statistics allowed since week 6 through 17, of course, the Chicago Bears are the fifth best matchup, allowing 17.73 on the ground based on rushing yards, rushing touchdowns allowed. This doesn't even take into account the receiving upside that some of your running backs would be implied to. But again, we of course want to fire up our running backs. Even though Saquon Barkley is not taking on the Giants, I still think that someone like Kenneth Gainwell, a pretty solid option. So even in the event in which he has a backup offensive line, I still have Kenneth Gainwell right here as my number 27 if you need to pick him up to fill in for, Barkley, who's expected to probably not play this week. Keep that in mind. Brian says, Barkley not going for the record? I doubt it. I mean, again, think about it this way, right? There's a possibility that they could give him the first quarter to try to go after it. He's going to need 100-plus rushing yards. But the reality of the situation is I primarily don't expect him to play because Jalen Hurts probably not going to play. And if they were going to send him out there, there's such a possibility of an injury. And the backlash that they would get potentially if he was to get injured prior to the playoffs, they have the number 2 seed, their automatic home game until they get to the NFC Championship game if they get there. Like, to put the record ahead of the team's goal of winning a Super Bowl, I think is not what Saquon Barkley stands for. I think that he's going to probably say, hey, listen, let's just rest everybody and let's push on to the to the NFL playoffs. I think that's what is going to happen. As to if it doesn't go that way, and if they say, hey, yeah, you know what, Saquon, we're going for the record, then hey, we'll fire him up because we know that he's going to get 100 rushing yards because he won't get pulled until he gets to that record. And at that point, we can absolutely start him within the given week. All right, let's see here. Cater says, can you explain the E tier and F tier, please? I mean, in terms of E tier and F tier, Antonio Gibson is now the starting running back of the New England Patriots. But this most recent Sunday, the head coach, Gerard Mayo of the New England Patriots, came out and said, Antonio Gibson is the starter. Based on rushing attempts, based on opportunity share, and based on snap counts, all of it favored Antonio Gibson in this most recent game. I would assume that he continues to be in the number one conversation of being the starting running back of that offense as they take on the Buffalo Bills this weekend. When they take on the Buffalo Bills this weekend, the Bills will probably play in the first quarter with their starters and then sit them for the remainder of the game, which will mean that Drake May and the boys will probably have an opportunity to just take on a kind of half starter, half second team defense of the Buffalo Bills for majority of that game, which of course would lean in their, kind of favor, especially considering last time out against that defense, they played relatively well. As for Jaleel McLaughlin, over the course of the last two starts of his, of this season, he's been hella efficient in terms of rushing attempts and of course his yards per carry average. So if he's going to be in a matchup in which they're taking on the Chiefs, who has a second string defense out there because they're not starting their main priority guys, as they're resting them considering they're the number one seed, if this is going to be a matchup in which, of course, we do see the Broncos take a very early lead, they'll be doing so, of course, running the ball in the majority of the second half with Jaleel McLaughlin, as he has been the primary rusher between him, Estime, and Javonte Williams. Michael Carter, this is under the assumption that James Conner doesn't play. While James Conner and Trey Benson has been out, Michael Carter has been the fill-in, who has been pretty solid for fantasy production. Gainwell, Corum, Ray Davis, they're all backups, but that's under the assumption that the starters are not going to play because, again, the Eagles, the LA Rams, and the Buffalo Bills, they have all clinched playoff positioning. Whether they win or lose as a team, it is regardless of whether they win or lose, they are going to be in the NFL playoffs, and their standings are not going to change. Therefore, the starters for those teams aren't expected to play because, again, it only just provides potential for injury risk rather than any sort of upside. So expect for Saquon, Kyron, and James Cook to either play in the first quarter and get pulled or not play at all, which is pretty much the MO for the LA Rams. Thank you. All right, let's see here. Flo says, Andrew, who wins these awards? Question mark. Half PPR, best waiver wire pickup, best late round draft pick, 9th round plus, fantasy MVP. Okay, well, look, it depends, right? There's so much nuance to that question. It very much so depends on multiple factors. First and foremost, if we're talking about a 9th plus round pick, are we talking about a 12-team or a 10-team league? Because that certainly makes a huge difference. Okay, because so that should be question number one that I want a response to. As for best waiver wire pickup of the season, okay, I think it depends. Again, it's very much so format dependent because I can guarantee you that there are people in your league who dropped Chase Brown. I can guarantee it. And somebody in your league sometime within this given season picked up Chase Brown. If I'm wrong, then again, you're probably playing in a 12-team or 14-team league where, again, there's a lot of potential teams there and a lot of bench spots. But I almost want to guarantee somebody dropped Chase Brown in your league because of what he did in the first 3-4 weeks. Now, as to if we're just avoiding that kind of a player and talking about the best waiver wire pickup of the season, let's go see. I mean, besides quarterbacks, which, again, like Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold's, I don't know. There are some leagues out there where people didn't draft Jaden Daniels, which doesn't make any sense to me. Because that's what I was going to say is like the best 9th plus round pick of the season. It was probably Jaden Daniels, assuming you play in a league in which he was drafted that late, depending on how many picks you have, whether it's a 10-team, 8-team, 12-team, very dependent in that circumstance. But as for, let's see here. If I look around the entire league in terms of best waiver wire pickup of the year, I'd have to actually go back and look at all of the waiver wire suggestions we had over the season. I'd say there's an argument for Kareem Hunt based on his contribution when he was in the mix. I'd say there's an argument. Well, I don't think Bucky Irving. I drafted Bucky Irving in leagues, so I wouldn't say that he's. Maybe Rico Dowdle wasn't drafted in your league, which again, I don't understand why that would be the case. Look, I think it's very much so nuanced. I think we'd have to go into it even further into detail. 12-team league, yeah, that's rough because I'd have to go look at all of the weeks of waiver wire suggestions I made. The only one that comes to mind that I can think of off the top of my head, which was like, again, super impactful at this point, was probably Kareem Hunt. But even then, he didn't last for very long. He wasn't a full year kind of guy. Okay, let me answer a couple more questions, and then I'll go into my backlog of waiver wire videos, and I'll look at names and see what we have there. Let's hear. Jake G says, see you next year, brother. Should have taken your advice. It's all good, brother. No problem. Is Bucky a second-round pick next year? I mean, there's a conversation to be had. I think he's surpassed over 1,400 yards this season, playing 45% of the snaps. Bucky Irving's a machine. Let's just put it that way. Andrew Matheson says, Is the Eagles defense a viable option in week 18 against the Giants? No, I don't think so. Again, they're not going to be starting their main guys, so I would assume that they're pulling their guys relatively early. Easy E says 6 points behind in a full PPR. Starting wide receivers are Chase, Neighbors. Who do you flex in this dilemma, Thielen or Addison or Jameson Williams? That is a really tough one. Between the three, I probably end up starting. I think conventional wisdom would tell me to start Thielen, but I kind of want to play Addison in that situation. Easy E says, okay, yeah, so we took care of Easy E's question. Thank you again. Your boy Chino sends in a question, says, quick question for a full PPR. I've got Lamar, Chase Brown, Jacobs, Justin Jefferson, Brian Thomas Jr., Kittle, Taylor, Dolphins defense, Riker, thoughts? I mean, I think you're good to go. Lamar's expected to play, so is Chase Brown, assuming he's healthy. If he's not, you could pick up Khalil Herbert instead. Josh Jacobs is good, Jefferson's good, Thomas is good, Kittle's good. Kittle will not have Purdy, which will make him a little bit of a lesser option, but hopefully not. Jonathan Taylor's your flex. Dolphins defense is great. Riker's great. Yeah, I think you're good to go this week. There's nothing really you need to change in regards to that lineup, unless, of course, Chase Brown is ending up missing. Nick AM says, in a full PPR flex, Achane, Gesicki, Mims, or Zakis. Okay, between those available, I don't really trust Achane at that high of a capacity. I mean, again, against the Jets, anybody can score, truly. So the safety is probably with him because we know that he's going to get himself probably 12 to 15 touches within the given game. So I'd probably lean towards Achane based on that kind of volume. Otherwise, it's Zacchaeus of the Washington Commanders. Loop says Chase Brown and that Cade Otton stretch were beasts. Yeah, I mean, Chase Brown is crazy. If somebody dropped him in your league and you were blessed by picking him up, congratulations. If you drafted him, as we talked about this offseason, and he ended up panning out, then it's as good as it gets at that point. Let me actually go look at the backlog of waiver videos that I had this season. Like Jalen McMillan at the end of this season was crazy. Now, obviously, once originally Chris Godwin went down, there wasn't much of an impact from him. But once Cade Otton kind of got washed out of the overall opportunity share, he really, as late, has taken over. But like just traveling back to like earlier this season, I'm just looking at the thumbnails of my videos. Like week 2's waiver wire was Isaiah Likely on the thumbnail. Obviously, that didn't do anything. The next week was Kareem Hunt, who of course lasted even last week he was relevant. So he was still firing away. Then we had Juwan Jennings in week 4, which again was a pretty good waiver wire pickup over the course of the season because of Brandon Ayuk's injury. So that could be one that's thrown into the mix. What's another player that we can throw into this mix? Bigsby wasn't great. Let's see. Is there any other names that I can theoretically... Pearsall didn't do anything until last week. Cedric Tillman kind of fell apart there at the end. DeMarcus, nope. There's not too many players that, again, there's no like Puka Nacua or Kyron Williams this year. You guys, you know what I mean? Like there isn't a singular player that came out of nowhere and ended up finishing at that like top 5 standing or at least top 10 standing. Like at the tight end position, sure, like Jonnu Smith was the guy that late in the year completely took over and now is a top 4 tight end in half PPR. But in regards to like running back, is there anybody that came out of nowhere besides Chase Brown? Not really. Everybody else was kind of expected to be in that conversation. Chuba Hubbard, I guess, but he wasn't a waiver wire pickup. He was more of a draft pick. Same thing with Chase Brown. They were both draft picks. At wide receiver, I guess Jerry Jeudy's the biggest surprise to be in that top tier conversation. Brian Thomas Jr. But again, those guys were still drafted at the end of the day. So again, there wasn't really anybody that was like drafted, there wasn't anybody picked up off waivers that was like a Raheem Mostert this year that ended up being top tier at the position, despite the fact that their ADP was 140 plus. All right, let me scroll down here. Your boy Chino says Neighbors or Brian Thomas Jr. I would probably play Brian Thomas Jr. there still. Especially considering what Neighbors did to that Giants defense last week, I'd imagine that Brian Thomas Jr., his former LSU teammate, would probably take advantage of it as well. Caveman Clan says, hey, Andrew, Happy New Year's, brother. Just wanted to say Knicks and BTJ got me to the trophy this year. You're appreciated. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Caveman. Congratulations. Frauden says, James Conner tried to sabotage my championship and the Colts didn't freaking help. SMH would have been on... Okay, dude, take it easy, Frauden. You're good, brother. You're good. Nick AM says, who are your top 5 defenses this week? Yeah, I mean, we talked about it yesterday in terms of the waiver wire video. We can go into a little bit kind of... I think I can maybe pull up the graphic right now. So I think it depends on what's available within your league, of course. But when I look at the matchups going into this week in specific, right? I want to play Baltimore's defense against Cleveland if they're available. I'd also try to, if in fact they're available, play, like Green Bay versus Chicago is a great defense. I think Tampa Bay versus New Orleans Saints is a great defense. The Broncos against the Chiefs, a great defense. Chargers versus the Raiders. Dolphins versus the Jets. Those are some solid defenses across the board. So again, from the top to the bottom, I don't know if I have them in this exact order, but this is just looking at the schedule as it persists. Ravens, Packers, Buccaneers, Chargers, Broncos. There could be conversations regarding some of these other defenses. Like when we talked about waiver defenses yesterday in terms of pickups, because that's what we did on the live stream yesterday. In terms of the couple of the names that I threw out there, Baltimore, Denver, Los Angeles, Green Bay, Tampa Bay, Washington. Washington was the only other one that in this list I didn't mention as of right now. But yeah, those would be the defenses that you would want to pick up and play. Let's see here. James Hurst says, after week 17, it's dead. LOL. Yeah, of course. I mean, listen, no one's supposed to play in week 18. No one is. Again, if you're playing in week 18, please do yourself a favor and please tell your league manager, if you're the commissioner, please, in future purposes, do not play in week 18. I'm only here because I want to help you guys win. That's it. I'll take time out of my day to do the research and plug in the rankings because, again, I've been doing this for 17, 18 weeks straight already. So, I mean, it's just second nature now. But again, understand that the situation going into this week, there's a possibility in which we could get to Sunday and like half these players are out with injury or they don't want to play and they don't have any incentives to play for monetarily. So they just end up sitting. So that, we're going to have to hope that that's not the case and that we're going to hope that even though guys could potentially like Kyrie Williams, Saquon Barkley could sit, hopefully the backups that you pick up are able to at least lead you to a championship and still help you capture that, the trophy and your winnings within your league. 26 bands up says, bro, nobody drafted Jerry Jeudy. I picked him up in week 15. Dude, brother, I'm telling you, objectively, not even joking, in my main priority league, Jerry Jeudy was 1,000% drafted. I'll tell you exactly. I'm looking at my league right now. Watch. I'm going to go to the draft. I'm going to go to view. No, not view. Let's go view all. I'll tell you exactly what round Jerry Jeudy was drafted in. In my main league, Jerry Jeudy was drafted at pick 163. So let's see what round that is. He was drafted in the 14th round. So again, yes, he was definitely drafted. And this is a super flex league, by the way. So this is super flex, 2 quarterback, 3 wide receivers, round 14. And he stayed on this guy's team for the entire year. Because to begin the year, he wasn't terrible with Deshaun Watson. He just, again, wasn't having much total for upside. Tyrone Tracy, 100%. Yeah, Tyrone Tracy, you know what? Now that you throw it out there, definitely within the mix for sure. Tyrone Tracy definitely coming on strong late in the season. You know the funny thing is Tyrone Tracy is this year's Antonio Gibson. And what I mean by that is if you guys remember Antonio Gibson when he came out into the NFL, his rookie season, I believe his rookie season was either 2019 or 2020. I can't actually, let's see here. Antonio Gibson. Let's find this really quickly. Antonio Gibson's first year in the NFL was 2020. He came into the league after playing the majority of his snaps in college football as a wide receiver. Same thing with Tyrone Tracy. He's a wide receiver converted to running back. He joins the league as a rookie, has the opportunity to start. He ends up taking the job because of a prior starter getting injured, and then all of a sudden he's off and away. The funny thing was the year after, Antonio Gibson ended up being a top 12 running back. So, hey, maybe fingers crossed that they get a pretty solid quarterback in New York, maybe improve their offensive line a little bit, and, Tyrone Tracy could be a guy next year. You never know. Let's see here. Jake G says, do you do mock drafts in the future? Would love to see some picks for each position. I mean, again, if we're talking about mock drafting for like 2025, that won't be done until August of 2025. So that's when content starts up again, guys. So again, for those of you who are wondering, this week will surpass. Once Sunday hits, I will have a playoff predictions video next week prior to the NFL playoffs. Outside of that, your boy's done for the year. And I'll see you guys in August of 25. We had a super generous super chat just sent in from Reaper13. Reaper, thank you very much. Says Andrew, LL from Patreon here. Just wanted you to know I played in 2 championships, just 2 leagues, won the big money public league, finishing diamond for the 2nd straight year. Finishing diamond in Yahoo, huh? That is ridiculous, brother. Congratulations. Your rankings of videos are what I use the most. Thank you for your efforts. Happy New Year. Thank you very much, Reaper. That's very generous of you. Again, you didn't have to go and do that, but again, it's greatly appreciated and it goes a long way. Thank you very much, sir. Very nice. I love to hear that, man, guys. Listen, anytime you guys can tell me that you won, it makes me feel better because, again, there are many leagues in which sometimes I'll make the wrong call and it completely goes awry. But when I know that at least I'm out here and helping you guys and it's leading to success and you guys are bringing home championships, it makes my day. Thank you. And at least, kind of justifies that all my efforts are going towards the in the right direction. Knicks or Wilson? I'd probably end up still playing Wilson there, to be honest. Dominic says, what do you think, Tony Pollard and Hall? What do you think, Tony Pollard or Hall? Yeah, I'd rather play Tony Pollard. Again, Hall is so dependent on how that script is going to go. The Miami Dolphins are trying to win that game because they're trying to still hope that maybe the Denver Broncos lose and they can somehow get a playoff, spot within the overall mix. The Dolphins' run stop defense has been really sharp this season, so I wouldn't expect him to get much utilization there. And of course, Hall hasn't been really a premier target within the receiving game in terms of upside in comparison to 2023. What he's done this season has been very much so a shell of itself. As for your next question, Dominic, it says Kittle or Smith. I'd lean towards playing Kittle this week, regardless of who's the quarterback for the 49ers. De Villalobos sends in a question, says, questions in the chat, bro. Thanks for everything so far. Says, my opponent has Lamar, Henry, Jacobs, JJ, Debo, Laporta, Bucky, Bills defense, and Bass. What should be my confidence / panic level? If I was you, I would go to your opponent and say, hey, brother, could we split the winnings 50-50? I'm looking at that team and I'm thinking to myself, Lamar, Henry are going to torch that Cleveland defense. You have to hope that the Baltimore Ravens defense scores multiple touchdowns so that they can take away from the upside of Lamar and Henry to where at that point, hopefully, fingers crossed, both of them get pulled at halftime and they're up 30 points by that point and you're good to go. In the event in which that does not happen, if they both go off, Jacobs is going to score, JJ is going to score, Laporta is going to score, Bucky's going to go off. The Bills defense, Again, I'm not too worried about the Bills defense there. Again, they're going to be pulling their main guys pretty early in that contest. Debo, again, is kind of a rough shot play there because, again, the backup quarterback, as to how confident we are with Josh Dobbs, to be determined. But the primary guys that he has, Lamar, Henry, Jacobs, Bucky, and Laporta, JJ, I'm afraid of. So that's my immediate thought on the matter. G. Snyder sends in a question, says, Andrew, my championships were last week. I just wanted to join and say thank you for the work this year. I'm in 2 leagues in the championship for both and won one of them. Congratulations. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, G. Snyder. Flo says, real quick, Andrew, who's the top RB pickup of 2025? RB pickup? Sorry, top RB pick. My apologies. I read that wrong. If we're talking about the number 1 RB for next season, I have a hard time thinking that the answer is not Bijan Robinson. At this point, what Bijan has done in the back end of the season, if he had done this since week 1, I don't think it'd be close. The guy would have just torched everyone. Now, that being said, Saquon is still coming off of a 2,000-yard rushing season. And even though he will be the age of 29, I think, right? Saquon, let's see here. Saquon Barkley age. He's 27. He'll be 28 next season. Even though he'll be 28, the fact of the matter is that Derrick Henry at the age of 31 is still pumping away and dominating a top 5 performances. So honestly, it's either Saquon or it's either Bijan. It's one of the two. I don't think Gibbs will be in that convo because Montgomery will still be around. Henry getting 1,800 yards and 18 touchdowns again is probably not going to be. It could be within the realm of possibility, but yeah, if I had to guess as of right now, considering the RB1 has never repeated in a full PPR ever, and this season it's going to finish as Saquon Barkley being as the RB1. Again, the stat holds that we haven't had a repeat RB1 in a full PPR in fantasy football in the last 20 plus years. Not a single year has it been back-to-back. So Saquon's not finishing RB1 next year. It's got to be someone like Bijan, right? That's the thought process. Angel Montero says, held onto Darnold all season for this. Yeah, for a reason. Let's go. Congratulations, Angel. Sorry, I also have JSN in the flex. My opponent has that. What do you have, though, brother? That's my question. What's on your roster? And I see your opponent's roster, but what's your roster, the Villalobos? Oh, I see your first question. It says, week 2 championship, I'm winning 163 with 123. Now I get the context. It says, I have Allen, but I had Darnold on my bench, okay, all year for a reason. It says, Gibbs, Sharps, Amon-Ra, Neighbors, McBride, Green Bay. Okay, got it. Now that I see your roster, with Gibbs, Sharps, Amon-Ra, JSN, Neighbors, McBride, Sam Darnold, I actually think you could probably pull this out. Because you have just as many players that are fighting, full clip. They're not going to get pulled. if anything, he has a higher chance of his players getting pulled, specifically Derrick Henry and Josh Jacobs, because of the matchups they're in which they could potentially even get to a point where their team scores 30 points without them even finding the end zone. There's always a possibility of that. We've seen that with Derrick Henry a couple weeks back when they took on the New York Giants. Lamar threw 5 touchdowns. Derrick Henry didn't find the end zone once. So honestly, I think you're in a pretty good shot there, considering the sizable lead that you have. Now that at this point, I think you can bring it home now. Now that I'm looking at the full context, De Villalobos. Dan C says, I won my Yahoo League last week with 175 plus points. Thanks for the advice all year long, especially the waiver wire assistance. Thank you, Andrew. No problem, Dan. I'm glad to help. Thank you. Mason Kim says, if James Conner played this week, where would he be ranked? If he was to play, let's say a full capacity, unhinged, James Conner, I'm talking about like full clip, he would probably be, I want to say RB11. I put him ahead of Tony Pollard, maybe even RB10 ahead of Charbonnet. But the only reason I have Charbonnet as high as I do is because I expect the Rams to kind of pull their starters and not play them going into this upcoming weekend, because that's how Sean McVay functions. So expect a lot of guys to be missing within that primary. But yeah, I have him in the top tier conversation. He'd be a top 12 running back within the given week, I believe, at least, based on how well he's played recently. If he was healthy, of course. Victor Cruz says full PPR. I won my full PPR league Sunday. Thanks for all the great work. Congratulations, Victor. Kevin says, should I start Sanders or Fairbairn? And do you think the Eagles defense is as good to pick up this week versus the Giants? I mean, again, look, here's the thing. In the National Football League, you can't pull all your starters on defense or offense because, again, you have a 54-man roster. You have like 7 guys that can be inactive every single week. So ultimately, there's still going to be a lot of starters within the mix playing. But am I going to fire them up over like trying to play Baltimore's defense or Tampa Bay's defense or something like that? Probably not. They'll be in the mix, though. I'd say keep them on roster. As we get closer to Sunday, I'll probably go ahead and by the time we get to Saturday afternoon, again, we're going to be live streaming here on the channel for like an hour and a half prior to the Saturday games. I'll have top 12 kickers and defenses ranked on screen, so if we need to make any audibles, we'll do that accordingly. Otherwise, as of right now, I haven't really looked too far into defenses because, again, there's still a lot of context that is missing regarding who's playing for sure and who's going to be inactive and who's healthy and all that kind of jazz, considering it's still Tuesday. Let's see here. UMatt says, in the championship this week with a 40-point lead, is it safe to say to drop Kyron to activate Dobbins? I have Corum also. Yes, I would say that it's safe to drop Kyron because, again, just looking at the history of Sean McVay, going back to just last season, week 18, the starters did not play. They were in the same position where they had already clinched a playoff positioning. They had no reason to play their starters, therefore they did not. They played Carson Wentz. They played Ronnie Rivers was the starting running back last season, week 18. So don't expect for Kyron to touch the field at all this week within the upcoming matchup. So if you needed to drop him in order to pick up somebody else, yeah, go for it. Somebody had asked earlier, do I play Sanders or Fairbairn? Kevin, I think I'm going to probably suggest, as of right now, considering there's a possibility that the Houston Texans first team offense gets pulled halfway through that game, I'd probably just play Sanders because I know that the Dolphins are trying to win no matter what, and Sanders has been incredible since the return of Tua. I think it's like week 9 and beyond. He's been one of the best, if not the best, kickers in fantasy. Actually, let me stat track that really quickly. Let's see how good Sanders has actually been. When was the Dolphins' schedule? If I go and I see their schedule really quickly, let me just cross-reference this just so I have a context. They played against the Cardinals in week, what is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7? Maybe week 8? Yeah, week 8. So since week 8, Jason Sanders is the number 1 kicker in fantasy. He averages 11.6 fantasy points per game. He's put up over 9 fantasy points, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of the last 9 games, 8 of the last 10 games. Jason Sanders is the guy. He's been incredible as of late. Okay, we had a question sent in from by Los Angeles. Says Dobbins over Pollard and Brees? Yeah, I would. Can you convince me? Yeah, I mean, look, I don't think I need to really convince you much, mainly because here's the thing. Brees Hall, with the offense that is currently constructed against that really, really difficult run stop defense. Again, we've talked about it ad nauseum over the course of the season. The Miami Dolphins are really, really good at stopping the run. There's a reason why they're ranked number 30th here. So if we're talking about the potential of Brees Hall, who doesn't get himself much opportunity alone, whether it is on the ground or through the air, it just doesn't complement him to potentially even play well within the matchup. especially considering how it's kind of constructed. Unless he scores a touchdown, it's really difficult. On top of it, when we're talking about Pollard and Dobbins, I mentioned this earlier, both of them have contract incentives. Both of them need to rush for over 80 rushing yards to hit their monetary, upside of like, I think $100,000 plus for both of them. Considering Pollard, again, has been dealing with an injury as of late, I have him lower ranked because, again, I still don't know what his 100% status is. He may not end up even playing this weekend and may just forego the incentive. While Dobbins for sure is going to play, as he looked great last week, he'll be playing this week. The Chargers want to go ahead and capture a victory, not only because they have a potential of jumping within the overall rankings. Again, if we look at the NFL playoff picture as it currently stands, where the Chargers currently sit at with their record, they are 10-6. If, in fact, they were to win this week, and, for example, Joe Burrow was able to help them, and the Steelers were to lose, they would jump up within the rankings. So again, there's always a possibility in which they want to go ahead and climb the rankings to get a potential better seeding. And at that point, they would be playing against the Texans. So that's what they want. They want to hope that on Saturday, Burrow can beat the Steelers, in which if he does, which again, Burrow's been incredible as of late. The Chargers, if they were to win against the Raiders, they would have the number 5 seed. The Texans will be the number 4 seed. They would be taking on the Texans in the first round, which, again, everybody wants to do, rather than taking on the Bills or the Ravens in the first round. So expect for Dobbins to be at a full clear against that defense. If I'm not mistaken, earlier this year as well, when Dobbins played against, I can confirm this right now. Let me just pull it up. Dobbins against the Raiders earlier this season. He ran for 10 carries for 135 and a touchdown. 10 carries, 135 and a touchdown. Expect for Dobbins to play relatively well this week. So if that doesn't convince you, then I don't know what else to do, brother. Thank you. All right, let's see here. All right, a couple more questions, then I'll be heading out again. I'll be back tomorrow, guys, in the new year, 2025. Over the course of this week, for those of you who are here, this is how it's going to function. I'm just going to live stream every night with rankings. Again, if you're not able to make it, the rankings will be posted on the channel within the live tab. These VODs will be available to you for you to go ahead and check out and have these available. But otherwise, tomorrow will be wide receiver, quarterback Thursday, tight end Friday, and on Saturday afternoon at noon PST, prior to the Bengals taking on the Steelers on Saturday afternoon, I will be here with updated rankings on screen. And of course, we'll live stream on Sunday morning at around either 8 or 8:30 a.m. PST, a couple hours prior to those games taking place. Thank you. All right, a couple more questions. Let's see what we have here. Someone asked Ertz or Smith. I think we'll just go with Ertz as of right now. Carson says, hey, Andrew, just want to say thank you for all the helpful information because I did pretty well. I won 6 of my 7 leagues I was in. I brought home 2 championships, second place in a couple of them, and third place, and then 1 7th place. Well, brother, congratulations. That's crazy. The fact that you were able to, bring home some money in each of them, that's fantastic. Love to hear that, Carson. Is Tua going to play? Don't expect him to do so. No. Angel Montero says, I'm up 80 going into week 18. Am I cooked? You're up 80? No, brother, you'll be fine. You're up 80 is a ridiculous number to try to, for your opponent to try to clear. Let's see here. Bro, Purdue out? Question mark? You mean Purdy, right? Yeah, I would expect Purdy to probably not play this upcoming week. Also, JMO or Judy? I'd probably lean towards playing JMO there. Like, Judy's opt, if you're playing in a full PPR, we could probably play Judy. Because of the volume of opportunity he will probably be exposed to. So yes, if you're playing a full PPR, you could probably play Judy there pretty comfortably. Luke Farrell says, lost my 1 league because I played Reichard instead of McLaughlin. Oh, brother, really? How much of a fantasy point differential is that? No shot. Instead of saying like you lost because of one kicker over the other, it's more like maybe one of your guys dropped a pass and that could have been like the full point difference. But let me see here. If I go to week 17 and I go to kickers, like in my current rankings or the current iteration of my league, yeah, Reichard put up 11 points and McLaughlin put up 12. They were kicker 3 and 4. Did you lose by 1 point? Is that what you're saying right now? There's no way, right? That's rough, brother. I'm sorry to hear that. Let's see here. Ebbs and Flow says, what's up, Andrew? Thanks again. No problem. Evans, anytime touchdown this week. I would say Evans, I think he needs, 83 yards to surpass 100 yards. Expect for Baker Mayfield to do everything in his power to get Mike Evans the ball this week. Again, expect everything in his power. So if we're going to put in entries, which we will later this week in regards to underdog plays, he has 915 receiving yards as it currently stands. Mike Evans needs 85 receiving yards to surpass 1,000 for an 11th consecutive season. Expect him to go nuclear and expect him to have a monster week this week. All right, so let's see here. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Happy New Year to you guys as well. Okay, Reichard missed a kick. Screwed me. Oh, brother, that's rough. That is rough. Yeah, he missed his first kick, right? It was like a 50. I'm trying to remember. Was it a 57-yarder they lined him up for, and he kind of like split it too far left? In my league, Reichard had 11 and McLaughlin had 14. Really? In your league, he had 14? What kind of extra points are you guys getting for kicking? That's crazy. Really? You got 14 from McLaughlin? Interesting. Okay, well, yeah, that is interesting. Because if you play in a league where maybe you get like 1 point per 10 yards of a field goal, that can make sense. Like if he kicks a 60-yarder, you get an extra point there. But yeah, Terry and Aubrey choke for me. Yeah, Aubrey wasn't a surprise because, again, they were playing against the Eagles. But Terry, that's the second time that Terry McLaurin recently, over the course of the last 2 months, has ran cardio. Otherwise, he's been incredible every other week. But yeah, he just had to disappear on the given week that we needed him in the most, unfortunately. Sorry, Riker had 9 and McLaughlin had 12. Okay, that makes more sense. Because of the miss, I'm assuming that you lost points because of that. That's how you got to 9, which would make more sense. Nick AM says, Knicks, Geno, Young, Mac Jones, full PPR, starting BTJ. As of right now, of those available options, I play Bo Nix. Yeah, that's the way that I'd go about that. Dan C says, thanks, Andrew, for showing up every week. Multiple videos, live streams go up. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Dan. Yeah, listen, I think we're on a pretty good streak of live streams. Again, we've live streamed every single day on the channel since September 5th. So we've made it all the way till the new year. And that's pretty much what we're going to call it, guys. Again, I'll be back tomorrow at 6 p.m. PST with wide receiver rankings at a top 36 capacity. Again, I'll be here, same thing on Thursday and Friday with quarterback and tight end rankings. And then, of course, we'll have Saturday live stream, Sunday live stream, and that'll be it until next week, in which we'll have a playoff predictions video. And we'll let it ride. I do appreciate y'all coming through. Happy New Year. Happy holidays. Hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your night. But that's where I'm going to call it. I'm queuing the double helix. I hope you guys have a good one. And until next time, I'll see you guys. Peace.